As always, I appreciate the talent of other authors telling their stories. I'm not sure Katie knew what it was like to be cheated on, rejected, and disrespected. Maybe after Jeff manages to let her know how it feels, she will have a different perspective on the subject. Don't you ever wonder how sometimes it can be a really great time in your life to be screwed, and other times it can totally suck? So, at that moment, my life was screwed, and I didn't like it one bit. Sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan. Take my business, for example. I'm good at what I do, but for reasons known only to the gods of fate, I've had a hard time making a difference in my life lately. Things haven't been going exactly as I planned. We haven't gotten to the point where the wolves are out the door. It's just that with the state of the economy, the way it is now, it seemed like business was lagging behind. Things were tight, but we were getting by. Damn it. We were still able to support the girls in college, so it couldn't be that bad, right? I know it has affected my own attitude towards life, as well as that of my wife, Kathy. The last week has only reinforced to me that I have really lost control of my life. Well, maybe that's not entirely true. I know I can influence the minor things in my life, but the things that really matter seem to be out of my control. Then I got a double whammy. I had just gotten the test results from the doctors, and they were on the coffee table in front of me. Cancer? Leukemia? You'd think so, and somehow I wanted it to be. What about degenerative cardiomyopathy? Yes, that's probably closer to the truth. You see, my heart is turning to crap, giving up the ghost. But not fast enough for my liking. I sat in my comfy rocking chair and felt so bad I could barely breathe. Why was I so sick? Well, I had just been diagnosed with a festering soup of minor STDs, nothing that couldn't be cured with a course of virulent antibiotics, but the aftermath was disgusting just the same. If you've read my wife's account of her extracurricular activities, you probably know what I'm talking about. I just found out that my wonderful, loving, and adorable wife is a whore, and as far as I can tell, has been for almost 3 years. That thought made me feel even more nauseous. How the hell could a man live 3 years with a whore and not know it? Had I really had my head so far up my ass that I hadn't seen the light of day? The only answer I can think of to answer that question in any way is, yes, and believe it. I trusted the bitch, and she stabbed me in the back more than 70 times according to her. And that's not counting the 11 or so regulars who visit her warehouse of fornication. She makes me feel more like a colander than a beloved husband. How can someone love you and do this to you for 3 years? If you ask her, she'll say she loves me. She'll try to sugarcoat it and call herself an escort or companion provider. What the hell? To paraphrase Shakespeare's phrase, "My apologies, kind sir," what's in a name? What we call a rose. By any other name it would be, and here I'm using a bit of poetic license, it's still a goddamn rose. This freaking troll can use any embellished words to describe his chosen profession. Escort, comfort provider, call girl or lady of the night, whatever. The facts speak for themselves. She entertains for money. She lets anyone, Tom, Dick, and goddamn Harry, whoever they want, as long as they have money. As you can imagine, any job has its occupational hazards. STDs are the standard for the industry. Registered and government-approved sex workers are regulated for these very reasons, and also, dare I suggest, so that the establishment can dip their money-hungry fingers in the honeypot, as far as I can tell. There are many weirdos in the world who fly around in just their panties, if they actually wear them, going unnoticed, and as far as I can tell, Kat is one of them. As soon as I learned of my health problems, I set about looking for any clues to my loving wife's extra work status. Bingo! One very detailed log with names, dates, financial rewards, and even client preferences and client equipment specs, all in alphabetical order. Right down to the star rating of their performances. Holy shit. I'll leave it to the reader to guess for themselves what I mean. I also found a story she posted online detailing her beginning of this nefarious lifestyle. I must admit that she is a meticulous and conscientious little bitch, and this, my dear listeners, will be her undoing. This I guarantee you. As bad as all of this is, there is one thing that tears me to shreds, and that is how in Christ's name will I tell our daughters about what their mother did to our family? In fact, that is now the only real heartache I have. A month after my world collapsed, I was able to get my ducks in a bunch, and I certainly wasn't a slacker. No, Sir Bob, I wasn't. I was a man on a mission. I was inspired by hate and revenge. People don't realize how close love and hate sit in a man. It's very scary when it hits you in the eye. Between my regular out-of-town cases, private investigators, lawyers, law enforcement, and even the IRS, I managed not to get between my whore wife's legs in any way. How did I do it, you ask? It's called a mild case of cardiomyopathy. That's right. I fooled that cheating whore of mine, who, by the way, insisted on being allowed to sleep in the same bed with me. The nerve of a woman. Into thinking I had heart problems and that the pills the doctors prescribed me seemed to be causing me a severe form of sexual dysfunction. That's right, folks. The periscope's hydraulics failed. I almost felt sorry for the poor guy. Such is life. Sarcasm, in case you missed it. I have to admit, I had to do some serious poking around on the internet looking for symptoms and remedies. Starting with lame pencil syndrome and working backwards until I came up with a plausible condition that was plausible. Don't forget that the whore was also a medical professional, so I had to do some serious homework to make sure she didn't get suspicious. I had to admit that she was trying her best, but all I could do was picture her with her legs spread and some fat guy with sweat rolling off his ruddy face, pounding into her, and that finished me off. Good night, Irene. After a few ineffective attempts on her part to boost my morale, I convinced her to leave it alone until I finished my medication. I don't know why she was so upset about my condition. I mean, she wasn't lacking sexually at all. I'm surprised she was interested in being with me at all. Something made me wonder a little bit, though. Working in a hospital, you'd think this dumb bitch would be watching her health. I don't know, I have no idea. Maybe all that skull entertainment has rattled her brain and numbed the few gray cells she has? I was a little disgusted to think that I had to lie to this cheating woman, but I did lie, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So how'd it work out? Something like this? I had just gotten back from my last trip the day before. Not that my wife knew that. She thought I still had a day or two before I got back. I had to get back because the mother of all shitstorms was brewing. I was the conductor, and today was the day it was supposed to start raining shit on the whore parade. Jeff, what are you doing home so early? Didn't you say you'd be back on Friday? She inquired, noticing me sitting in a chair in the living room. I'm not sure if she came from job number 1 or job number 2, but she seemed a little nervous and didn't linger to hear my answer as she went up the stairs, from where I could hear the sound of the shower running. Probably job number 2 in that case. When she came back downstairs, she was rubbing her hair with a towel. Honey, are you okay? Great, Kat, just great. She frowned. You see, I only called her Kat when I was annoyed with her. The rest of the time it was Katie or Caitlin when I was neither. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Oh, God. Please give me some good news. My day has been full of ups and downs. I really need some good news right now. Sounds to me like it would be more like ups and downs. But then again, if she was on top, it could be both ups and downs, I thought to myself. Doc took me off the heart medication, and Mr. Willie is working his way up to full strength. Really, he said at the beginning that it wouldn't last too long. From the way she squealed, you'd think the damn woman had won the lottery or something. Oh, honey, that's absolutely the best news I've heard in the last 100 years. I've been so frustrated not being able to show my man how much he means to me. I think this is cause for celebration in the bedroom. I looked at my watch. Probably not. See, this is where the bad news comes in. You won't have time with all these interviews, meetings, and appearances that will take up so much of your time. The stupid slut looked puzzled. She had such a stupid grin on her face that it just made me cringe. I had to admit I was being pretty vague, and I was enjoying the hell out of it. I don't have anything planned that I can remember, and certainly nothing for the next hour or so. A wink, 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 say no more gave away her intentions. Even if we have time for 5 minutes of sex, I really have no intention of revisiting the cause of the condition that has caused me to be medically brain dead for the past 2 months. Kat just stood there trying to figure out what I was talking about. Your words don't make any sense, sweetheart. I wish you'd stop talking in riddles and come out with it. Kat, the medication I was on wasn't for cardiomyopathy. It was a batch of antibiotics for a cacophony of pretty nasty viruses. Can you imagine what I thought when the doc accused me of sleeping with my wife, especially when I know for a fact that there was only one woman I was sleeping with? Kat just stood there and her face grew grim. What are you trying to imply? Get over it, Kat. You've been strung up on your own pedal, sweetheart. I have all the evidence I need to prove you've been deceiving me. Kat's face drooped and went white, and then she collapsed into the chair. Oh God, no, no, no. This can't be happening. Is this some kind of sick joke? I nodded to Kat as she sat up with tears in her eyes. Yes, Caitlin, it's a joke. A very sick and pathetic joke, and I was the recipient of it, but I survived. Now the joke is on you. Can you say the same? It didn't mean anything, honey. I didn't love him. It was just sex. I looked into her sad, wet face and shook my head. She was clearly grasping at straws, anything to distract me from the real truth. It was a mistake, and only once. I raised my hand with a grin pasted on my face. Spare me the lies, you goddamn troll. If you have no self-respect, at least have some for me. You've treated me and your family like imbeciles for the last 3 years or so. You've jeopardized my health and possibly the health of our daughter's idiots, like you have very few gray cells, so you need to conserve the ones you do have. I know I was particularly harsh in my tone. Venom dripped from my every word. I just lost my rag and pounced. Kat blushed at my rhetoric. No matter how many times we'd argued in the past, I'd never come close to such a callous disregard for her feelings. She just sat there staring at me, physically shuddering. I found your diary, you cesspool trash. You're a lowly slut, but I have to admit you're quite successful. I have no idea how you managed to get away with your complete disregard for poor hygiene for so long. With those words, Kat threw up all over herself. I got up and went to the bathroom to get a washcloth and towel, not so much for her benefit as for my own. I had a suspicion that there was more to say, and I felt a little queasy looking at her like that. After cleaning herself up a bit, she began, Please, honey, I know we can overcome this mistake if we really try. I love you very much, and I know you love me. I did this for us, for the family. Please, I'm not a whore, I'm an escort. If this were a sitcom, this would be the moment where the main character turns to the audience and says, See, I told you she would say that, didn't I? But since that wasn't the case, I had to restrain my sarcasm, well, at least a little. What do escorts do then, Kat? She began to explain her job description. Shut up, asshole. It was a rhetorical question. Shit. You have the mental acuity of a 5-year-old. No matter what you want to call it, it still comes out the same. You do it for the money. That's it in a nutshell. Kat's shoulders sagged as if the weight of the world rested on them. Then she spoke in a whisper that I strained to hear. I'm going to call Caroline and tell her I'm quitting, and then we can sit down and talk it over? I know that if I can get you to understand my thoughts, we can get through this. The money was meant for our retirement. I was never going to keep it for myself. You were right. I am good at what I do. We have almost $500,000 that we can put aside for our retirement fund. I checked my watch once more and shook my head. No, don't, and don't bother calling Caroline. I dare say she already knows about your predicament. I doubt she'll really care what kind of shit you're in, because she has enough problems of her own. Kat looked me in the eye and asked the very question she was probably dreading. Why? What are you going to do? I have money. It's in a separate bank account. I don't need to do anything right now. What's done is done, and like your decision to sell yourself and flush our marriage down the toilet, there's no going back. Caroline and her husband are now at the police station, answering charges of pandering and molestation. If you decide not to run and hide under some rock, I dare say the police will be here in the next 10 to 15 minutes to take you to Caroline. Maybe they'll let you share a cell, and then you can tell her that you finally got screwed big time, and this time screwed by your ever-faithful husband. But I highly doubt you're on their Christmas list for this or any other year. Oh my God, no, please don't say that. You have to help me, Jeffrey. I don't want to go to jail. You should have thought of that while those idiots were filling you with STDs to bring home to your loving husband. You're your own man. I had the devil's work of extracting myself from your shit. After the police deal with you, the IRS wants a piece of your scurvy hide. All your bank accounts are seized. You don't even have $2. At this, Caitlin perked up a bit. Why on earth would you do that? Are you out of your mind? That's almost $500,000 of my hard-earned money that you threw away. I told you it was meant for us, and now after all this we have nothing? Why on earth were you going to get all that money without me knowing where it came from? Kat just stared at the floor. I don't know, I didn't really think about it. I figured we might have won the lottery or something. The pitiful look on her face said that even she didn't believe she could get this past me. For you statement before that isn't very cat. You're the only one with nothing but the clothes you're wearing. After you go through the court on the prostitution charge, and while you languish in your not-so-comfortable cell, I will divorce you and get everything from the marriage. I still have money and assets, and once I've dealt with Caroline and her jerk husband and your entire client list in the diary for alienating affection, I can probably retire and live the life of Riley. The seriousness of the situation seemed to finally reach her consciousness. You really hate me that much, don't you? She lowered her gaze to her hands and sighed. I don't know how you could do this to me if you ever loved me, or maybe you never did. I love you, Jeffrey. None of this has anything to do with us. I never meant to hurt you, so how could you do this to me? Why do they always say shit like that? Then the tears started to fall again. I almost didn't answer her question, instead I muttered. Don't you dare say I didn't love you. How long would I have had to wait until you brought home to me some more serious disease like AIDS or hepatitis C? My God, woman. You work in a goddamn hospital, for Christ's sake? Didn't it ever occur to you to get tested regularly? Kat shook her head, trying to think of some plausible answer. I couldn't pass a background check. I'm too well known in the community for that kind of information to spread. It's not like I'm walking the streets. The clients I serve are just regular business people who just need company for the night. So I just put it out of my mind and convinced myself that it wouldn't happen to me. Did it ever occur to you that one or two of these same businessmen might be picking up prostitutes on the streets? Caitlin just stared at the floor in front of her and said nothing. How long could you hope to get away with this charade before someone found out about it and reported it to the authorities, and I was dragged into your nightmare as well as Caroline's husband? Like I said, it took a lot of fiction to convince the IRS not to raid my assets. They wanted to do the same thing the police were doing to Caroline's husband. The police seized all of their combined assets. I paced as my temper was building. Apparently they were paying taxes, so the IRS isn't interested in Caroline and her extracurricular activities, which I gather you didn't bother to do. But the police found out that Caroline, although paying taxes, was not registered as a sex worker, and their house was an illegal brothel. So the authorities confiscated everything they owned. You and all your cronies are dear toast, and there's nothing you or I can do about it. Just then the doorbell rang. It's probably for you, honey. Don't bother with birthday or Christmas cards, okay? Caitlin stood up, looking like something a cat dragged in, and answered the phone. Caitlin Summers? The police officer asked. When Kat nodded, she continued. We are here to arrest you on prostitution charges. You will come with us to the station to answer further questions. You have the right to remain silent. As the officers read Kat her rights, the female officer turned her around and snapped the handcuffs on her wrists. Caitlin, for her part, just stood there looking at me with an embarrassed face and pain-filled eyes. Please, Jeffrey, don't let them do this, honey. I'm not a bad person. I've never hurt anyone. At least, can I ask you one last favor? Could you call my parents and let them know I'm going to need a lawyer? I'm so sorry, Jeffrey. It was at that moment that I couldn't hold back my own tears. No more than I did, Caitlin. No more than I did. And what I'm about to say will make it worse. Caitlin began to cry almost uncontrollably. I think she guessed what I was about to say. You don't have a family, Caitlin. Everyone already knows what you did to your family. None of them want anything to do with you. Not your mother, not your father, not your siblings. Not even your daughters. They asked me to tell you that their mother died 3 years ago. With those words, I sank back into my chair and buried my face in my hands. All the emotions I'd been coping with and keeping bottled up for the past couple months bursting out, and I couldn't stop them. The cops just turned Kat around and escorted her to the patrol car. I remembered an Italian friend of mine once told me about a saying his parents used when he was rowdy and out of control. Dopo a risata venati uccianto, or loosely translated it reads, after laughter comes crying. I couldn't help but feel that this saying so aptly applies to this situation. Caitlin has had her fun, now she's going to be crying for a long time. So, what I came to after the smoke cleared and everyone had time to lick their wounds, bury their dead, and try to make the most of what was left. 1. My ex-wife was a disease-infested whore who was going to prison and whose family divorced her. 2. Caroline and her husband Chad lost everything they owned either through forfeiture or my lawsuit. 3. Cascade Engagements and Robert Casey had to explain to the authorities why their license to operate should not be revoked. However, that is not what ultimately befell them. It was the loss of clients and reputation that drove them out of town. 4. Caitlin's clients scattered and dived into the nearest cesspools to avoid my lawsuits, and as far as I can understand, after the smoke cleared, a string of divorces and bankruptcies began. That was not the last time I saw my now ex-wife. I saw her again shortly after she was out on parole after serving 9 months of a 1-year sentence on prostitution charges. Apparently, some politician was having a re-election at the time, and they threw the book at her. I was told that 1 year for a first offense is pretty rare, but the authorities wanted to make a statement that they were cleaning up the neighborhood. I know it's all political talk and nonsense because no one can ever eradicate the oldest profession in the world. Kat was wearing the same clothes she'd worn to prison, the same clothes she'd worn out of the house, but they didn't fit as well now. She had put on a lot of pounds, and now they only emphasized her fatness. When she saw me, she turned and ran crying into the crowd. But even then, I didn't feel sorry for her. I was too preoccupied with my own demons. It was another 2 years before I ran into her again. "Hey, Jeffrey." I looked up and saw Caitlin standing nervously in front of my desk, swaying from foot to foot. She looked, if not beautiful this time, certainly presentable, though you could tell that time and the rush of energy had taken its toll. You'd be right if you thought she looked like a tired old prostitute, but for the sake of decorum, I kept my opinion to myself. "Caitlin." Looking around to see who was in the club at this time, "What brings you here?" "What do you want?" I tried not to make it sound bitter, but I'm not at all sure I succeeded. Kat looked over her shoulder. "Yes, Jeff, I'm still a whore, old, tired, worn out but legal, and still working, trying to make ends meet." "Are you afraid someone will recognize me and wonder if you're messing with low-life scumbags now?" I only shrugged. We both have reputations to protect. I see no reason to put either of them in danger. My sarcasm burst out. Kat frantically clutched her clutch purse in her hands. "I need to talk to you, Jeffrey. I need to know how the girls are doing. I've never once abandoned them. You have to believe that. I get sick to my stomach at the thought of never seeing them or talking to them again. I've tried to talk to my family, but Mom and Dad just slammed the door in my face, and neither my sisters or brother are any different." Kat started to cry. "Please, Jeffrey, I know I screwed up beyond measure, but I need to at least know what the girls are doing. At least something to keep me sane. I'll get down on my knees and beg if I have to. Just give me an hour of your time and I'll never bother you again." I don't know if it was due to the passage of time or the fact that I was having as much trouble getting over what had happened as I was. I guess I needed closure too, so I gave up and checked my watch. "I have a couple I'm waiting for to come over. Meet me in the park at the corner of 10th and Vicks tomorrow at noon. I'll even yell lunch." Caitlin brightened and almost fell over thanking me. "Oh, thank you so much, Jeffrey. You have no idea how happy this makes me. I promise I won't push you in any way. Thank you, and thank you again." She pulled back with a tearful smile. "I better get my ass out of here before your friend shows up and decides your standards have fallen through the floor. Thanks again. I'll see you at the park tomorrow at noon sharp." With those words, she sprinted out into the street twice as fast. While I waited for Dana to show up, I had time to ponder what might be in store for my afternoon meeting with Caitlin. My life since the day Caitlin was taken away to prison hasn't been bedecked with roses. I don't have to work, but I do it more to keep myself occupied than for any other material reason. I spend most of my time doing charity work for nonprofit organizations. Cystic fibrosis is one of the ones I'm heavily involved with, as my longtime friend's child has the disease, and I can tell you that it's an insidious disease that is nearly impossible to survive. Things like this have helped take my mind off the breakup of my marriage, but have not completely erased it from my memory. I spent many sleepless nights wondering where I had gone wrong. Could I have ever once before Kat's fall from grace have deviated her from her chosen path? I know it has affected my relationship since then. I now have a find them, have fun, and forget attitude. Very rarely have any of my relationships lasted longer than a month or two. I crave the closeness I felt with Kathy, and I find myself getting angry all over again. I was kind of glad when Dana showed up and helped me push the sad thoughts to the back of my mind for at least one more night. For our conversation, I chose a park that had few visitors and a nice, secluded picnic table. Not that I needed it for the same reason I had used this particular table in the past. Caitlin was already there, sitting with her back to me and just staring at the line of bushes that hid this meeting place. I was interested in the fact that I had arrived almost an hour early myself. Her attire wasn't the best, but it was clean and tidy. Her clothes clearly looked like charity items. I considered staying and letting her wait, but realized that was petty, and it made no difference what time the appointment was. "Did you sleep here last night?" Kat jumped up and spun around at the sound of my voice. "Oh, God, you scared me." She quickly regained her composure, though. No, I don't have much to do in the mornings these days, and contrary to what you might have thought yesterday, I didn't work last night, so I was in bed and fell asleep early. I woke up nervous this morning because I didn't know if you were going to show up or if you were going to set me up to get a little revenge." I was about to comment, but she held up her hand. "I knew deep down that you wouldn't do that. You're not that kind of person, but it still bothered me. I thought it was so sunny and nice today. It might be nice to have some time to sit and think about what I need to say." "Okay, then it's your 60 minutes. Just please spare me the insincere apologies and ridiculous platitudes," I said, taking a seat across from her. Kat watched me sit up. "I have every intention of apologizing, but I can assure you it will be sincere and from the heart. As for platitudes, you have to have arrogance to utter them, and I don't have an ounce of arrogance in my body right now. You etched it out of me years ago. The life I lead now doesn't leave much room for anything resembling a sense of self-importance, but at least I'm better off than Caroline." I felt my eyebrow raise upon hearing about Caroline, and Kat noticed it and smiled. "I thought you might be interested in this. I live in a studio apartment with a single bed, a dresser, a small basin, and a microwave as furniture. I live in luxury compared to Caroline, and I can't seem to feel the slightest sympathy for her. When we were put in jail, she made it her mission to punish me. I can tell you I have no good feelings for her or her trouble. Caroline and Chad broke up. Apparently genital warts are a real pain when they appear around the mouth." Caitlin chuckled slightly at that. Chad had a fetish for crampies, and Caroline was all too willing to supply them to him. Now she's shuttling between women's shelters while taking care of business and distant allies. Chad has left town for parts unknown, and Caroline has to survive on her own. At least I have my own rented place and work in a legal low-income brothel." She lowered her head and whispered as if to herself. "Well, at least for now. Judging by the financial entries in your diary, I'd have thought you were on easy street. What happened to the $3,000 a day you were making?" Caitlin lifted her head and stared at me with a blank stare, then burst into laughter. "I suppose I deserved it. You once accused me of mistaking you for an imbecile. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't try to convince me that you are one. Look at me, Jeffries. I'm a 53-year-old prostitute who's aged 20 in the last 7 years. When all this shit hit the fan, Cascade Engagements went out of business. Robert wouldn't even return my calls, and my regulars were either too busy trying to save their own hides or so pissed off at me that I couldn't get $5 for the whole night." Kate shrugged and sighed. Rumors travel fast in this industry, and I was too much of a hot potato. Now I'm just surviving day to day, waiting for the day I follow Caroline and become a bag lady. I sat and studied Caitlin's face. I was trying to figure out if this rhetoric was necessary to elicit sympathy or not. The look she gave me wasn't sympathetic, just resigned. "Why don't you get a normal job?" Kat just smiled. I found out very quickly that I don't have a snowball's chance in hell of that ever happening. I've so ruined my reputation that no respectable employer will touch me. The terms of my parole state that I must inform any prospective employer of my criminal record. While 53 years old isn't bad enough to find a legitimate, respectable job, having a criminal record negates the chances. It annoys me that my criminal record puts me in the same group as pedophiles and rapists as a sex offender. It means I can't work anywhere near children. I had to admit that this bit of information hit me, and we sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Kat brightened up a little. "Well, there you go, Jeffrey. My life is shattered beyond recognition. And before you say anything, unlike Caroline, who thinks you and I are to blame for all her misfortunes, I don't hold you responsible for a single little thing." Caitlin twisted the napkin she held in her hands. "At first it was, I cursed the hell out of you for throwing away our marriage and my life. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I did it all on my own. And for what? For the thrill of sexual encounters, for the high I was getting from the depravity of going behind your back. Caitlin made a grimace. I take full responsibility for my fall from the heights. I'm terribly sorry that I hurt you so badly. I'm beyond grief-stricken over what I did to our girls. I can't imagine what they had to go through at school and with their friends, having a mother like me. There are no words to express the pain I feel at night, the disgust I feel for myself, forcing myself to endure another day at work. You told me I embellished what I was doing. You were right. It was the money that made me look respectable. I realized that my clients no more respected me than a $20 hooker on a street corner. The tears were already falling, and I had to admit I was sick of her. You have caused me unimaginable pain, Jeffrey, but if you feel even a tenth of my anguish for what I have done to you, it is too much for me to bear. I humbly ask you to give me some peace. I know I have no right, but I ask you to forgive me for my presumptuous stupidity that destroyed the only thing I thought I was worthy to live for. Caitlin fell to her knees and burst into tears. I beg you to let me know what our children are doing, to give me something to hold on to, because where I am right now is nothing short of hell. The look on my face must have alerted Kat to what I was thinking. Ooh, don't worry. I have no intention of committing suicide. I don't have the guts for that. Caitlin sobbed and then broke down. I needed a break, and I was sure Kat did too. Tell you what. You agree to let me buy you lunch, and I'll forgive you for being a dumbass. And I'll try to help you fix the bridge with the girls. What do you say? Deal? Caitlin snorted and ran a trembling hand over her face to mop up the tears running down her cheek. I made my offer so non-seriously that she thought I was just twisting a knife. Please don't do this, Jeffrey. I meant everything I said today. I'm sorry for everything, but if you can't find it in your heart to forgive me, then I'll just have to accept it and leave you alone. Caitlin rose to her feet and, bowing her head, finished. I can see that you still hate me, so... Goodbye, Jeffrey. I hope in my heart that you can get over this and move on with your life. Please tell our girls that I still love them and wish them well. As she turned to leave, I said, I never answered that question, did I? Kat paused for a moment but said nothing. You asked a question right before you left on the day you were arrested. You said, You really hate me that much, don't you? You repeated it just now. Kat nodded. To set the record straight, no. No, I didn't hate you. I didn't even hate you. I hated what you did. I wanted to strangle you. I wanted to kick you to death, but not because I hated you. It was because I loved you with all my heart, because you took my wife, my life, my family, our future that we had worked for our entire married life and killed it. I loved you then, and strangely enough, I still do. I brushed the leaves off the table as I continued. Like you, I've had years to process what happened, and when you left last night, I realized I traded one whore wife for a whore ex-wife. I hadn't made up my mind about a damn thing. All I did was repaint my life white and hate it every time the old life made itself known. Yes, you hurt me, but after I kicked your ass out, I continued to hurt myself, and I need to stop if I ever want to find peace. I looked straight at her. For that, I need to show you mercy, for what you yourself have said is unforgivable. I forgive you, Katie, and though I can't forget and I can't make any promises, I will help where I can. But there is a price to pay for everything, as there is for everything in life, and this will enable me to buy you lunch. Katie stood there trying to decide whether to cry or laugh, and ended up doing both. Are you serious? Are you really, really serious? I smiled and nodded. Oh boy. All right, if that's the price I have to pay, even though I'm penniless, I think I can definitely afford it. Both of my gray cells have finally found each other and are telling me I'd be a fool to turn down an offer like this. Yes, Jeffrey Summers, I'd love to have lunch with you. After the waitress left after bringing us our food, Kathy sat staring at hers. Oh my God. I haven't had lobster in years. I hope I didn't drool all over my Sunday dress. Picking up her wine, she sniffed his bouquet. I know it's temporary, but I've missed it too. I see you remember my favorite wine. Chateau Carton is the only wine I can afford lately, and it's so overrated. I saw an article in the paper the other day. There was a picture of you with a tall, leggy blonde. Was she the couple you were waiting for yesterday? She's certainly beautiful. I smiled at Caitlin's attempt to find out about my love life. Yeah, that was Dana. She's okay, you're a typical blonde. She could find her ass with both hands and a map, but she definitely helps with the functions I attend from time to time. Caitlin sat looking at me for a while. This isn't the Jeffrey Summers I know and love. Did I do this? Do what? Make you cynical. In all the years I've known you, Jeffrey, you've never censured anyone for an outward sharpness of mind. I fiddled with my food for a while before answering. I guess so. When you're lied to, laughed at, and generally shit on by someone you thought was your rock, it destroys your faith in humanity. Bullshit, Jeff. Though I agree that I've probably destroyed your faith in women, and especially wives. I don't see it spilling over into humanity as a whole. If you believe what I read in the paper, it doesn't. Are you a spokesperson for any charitable organizations? You can't be that unhealthy and be a leader of charities like you are. So, like I said, bullshit. I smiled. Getting a little cocky, aren't we? Caitlin smiled back at me. I know when I'm wrong, I know when I have to eat crow. But I'll be damned if I'm going to cowardly for reasons not of my own making. I'm sorry for making your personal life a misery, and I'll apologize for corrupting your faith in the female gender until the day I die. But I won't back down if I know I'm right, and I'm right here. Katie and I spent our lunch chatting and generally getting to know each other anew. I don't want to mislead you, but that doesn't mean there's any chance of us getting back together. Kathy smiled. I know Jeff and I didn't expect you to ever want me again. I'll be happy with what I have. It's much more than I ever hoped for, and definitely more than I deserve. Thank you for all your compassion. You've always been a good person. I just forgot about it for a while. 60 minutes of Katie's time turned into an afternoon, and I think by the time we parted, we both had a new appreciation and respect for all the delights of life. But there was still one thing that gnawed at my sensibilities. To say that Kathy was dumbfounded and confused when I showed up at the brothel she worked at was an understatement. What the hell are you doing here, Jeff? She asked, nervously looking around the room with her eyes. You can't be here, it's not right. You have to leave before anyone recognizes you. She was wearing the most hideous hot pink and green candy apple ensemble imaginable, all on 5-inch pink CFM pumps. I'm not much of a color coordinator, but it wasn't the one, that's for sure. I'm not going anywhere until I talk to you. The rough-looking woman behind the counter grabbed my arm. Look, buddy, I don't care if you want to talk, it's still going to cost you $50 an hour. I turned and stared at the creature from the Black Lagoon. How much for the rest of the night? Jeffrey's not here, shouted Katie. The woman seemed to step back and reflect. You seem to be a man who can afford something better than this old piece of sewer trash. I have prettier and younger girls here who will rock your socks all night for $500. I had an overwhelming urge to destroy it right where it stood, but I realized that some huge gorilla would stand in the wing and demand a high price for this mistake. If I wanted something better, I wouldn't shop in this rat-infested hole, would I? So how much? Caitlin just stood there, kneading her hands. I could see the disgust on her face as she grinned back. $200 for you, sweetheart, but no rough stuff. It'll cost you more. I tossed the 2 bills on the counter and grabbed Katie's hand to leave. Where the hell are you going? I turned around and snapped back. You don't think I'm going to stop there, do you? You never know what a person might pick up. Don't worry, she won't get hurt. With those words, I grabbed Katie by the elbow and dragged her away from there and down the street. Please, Jeffrey, slow down. These shoes are definitely not made for walking, let alone running, she begged, stomping alone beside me. I slowed, then stopped. You're right. That outfit makes you look like a damn clown. Looking up and down the street, I spotted just what I needed. Pulling her into the nearest clothing store, I told her to follow me and keep her mouth shut. Efficiently sorting through the clothes on the racks, I spotted something I liked and, pulling a beautiful, creamy, knee-length skirt from A-line off the rack, slapped it to her chest. Take that. Next was a modest blouse with a high neckline and ruffles down the front. Katie said nothing as I picked up a jacket to match the skirt and then headed for the underwear. I doubted, judging by the boob tube and saggy 36C cups, that she was wearing a bra, but I found a simple white lace bra and bikini set and a pair of tan stockings. Here, take these and change while I find you some practical shoes. When Katie came out of the fitting room, she looked 1,000% better. I handed Katie the bone-colored court shoes with an inch heel and asked our assistant, Do you have a bathroom and some makeup she could use? I'll pay you for it. The aide smiled and nodded, handing over a small compact. Just through there. She pointed in the direction at the back of the store. I handed the cosmetics to Katie. Get that stupid shit off your face and come back here. While Katie was out, I paid for the help, and when she came back, she looked gorgeous. A little eyeshadow and lipstick made her look like $1,000,000. Now that's what I'm talking about. The assistant giggled as she watched Katie blush. I'm impressed, sir. You certainly have a knack for women's fashion. I'm also baffled that you picked it all out to perfection in just under 10 minutes. Remind me not to go shopping with you. She chuckled. To a questioning look, she replied, You're taking all the fun out of shopping. Kathy and I chuckled as I gathered the clothes and shoes Kathy had carried to the store into a pile, pulled out a $50 bill, and held it out to our assistant. Can you burn this for us? The girl smiled, tucking the bill into her bra. My pleasure, sir, and thank you for shopping at Willow's. Back on the street, Kathy looked like a perfect 50-year-old housewife as she stopped me. Now what? You've made me look like a prim and proper society wife and mother, even though we both know it's an illusion. Now we'll find a quiet place to have a drink and have a serious talk. I sat across from Caitlin, sipping my wine. She looked almost as good as she did before all this started. But she was right. She had aged, but with the right makeup and clothes, it was 10 years in the last 7, not 20. She didn't look happy, but dejected. Why am I here, Jeff? Why this charade? We both know I have to go back to what I am, and all it does is remind me of what I've lost. Do you still want to try your hand at being a remorseful mother? You mean apologize to our girl? You know I want to, Jeff. I just don't think that's the way to do it. I've had enough of lying. I can't and won't lie to them. They'll see through this disguise and laugh at me. I won't be able to handle this, Jeffries. I'm not asking you to lie, but you need to realize that as long as you continue to be promiscuous, they won't want anything to do with you. You need to change jobs. Caitlin sighed. We've been over this before. With my age, track record, and reputation, no sane employer would touch me with a 40-foot barge pole. I'm stuck with what I am. Then she bloody well started crying. For God's sake, don't start crying, woman. You have no makeup to repair your face. I held out my handkerchief for her to blot her eyes. There is one possibility. Can you try becoming self-employed? Katie squinted at me in bewilderment. Don't be a fool. I don't have the money to start a business, and even if I did, you've blown any chance of getting any worthwhile clients. It's no different than working in a brothel, even if I owned one. I'll just end up like Claire, and the girls won't want to meet me anyway. Claire? Who the hell is she? Caitlin shook her head. The woman you paid $200 to this afternoon and then proceeded to belittle. I'm surprised she didn't pull away and slap you. No one talks to her like that, especially the Jonas. I have a feeling that when I get back there, she'll have some particularly nasty request from a customer that I'll have to attend to. Ooh, you mean the maggot? Well, she pissed me off, and don't worry, let her service her lowlifes. You're not going back. I slouched in my seat and circled the bottom of my beer glass around the coaster in front of me, not really looking at Kathy. Look at me, Jeffrey. I have to go back. If I don't, then it's a reverse alliance with Caroline and the women's shelters. Is that what you want? I looked up at Katie with a smile on my face, and she was clearly annoyed. I had to laugh, and she leaned back in her chair angrily. I can see that you're caught in an ever-tightening circle that will eventually drive you up your own ass. Heck, you've had your head up your own ass for years, so I guess you're headed in the right direction. I needed her to do something first before I told her my idea, so I motioned my cell phone across the table to her. First of all, pick up the phone and tell that maggot she can go have fun. Katie hesitated, trying to figure out what I was up to. Do it, Katie, I'm not kidding. To her credit, she did, and then sat back down. Okay, I basically just threw myself out on the street. If you have nothing better to do, I'm going to sleep with Caroline tonight. Katie flashed her eyes at me and I continued. Who said anything about opening a brothel? I was thinking a little more about a coffee shop. Kathy sat and thought. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Okay, I'll tell you. I've been indoctrinated with one way of thinking since this nightmare started, but it still won't help me financially. I don't have the capital to start something like this anyway. You may not know, but I do. Katie stared at me, then blinked a couple of times before bringing her hand up to her mouth to suppress a sigh. The realization that what I was saying was worth the money I'd spent on her new outfit. Really? Ooh, what I'm saying, of course it is, but you mean you're going to help me get out of this bloody, awful mess I'm in? I'll be honest with you. I'm doing this more for our girls than for you. If you want me to, I'll do it too, unless of course you like to have fun and want to stay put. Caitlin sat up and stared at me. Listen, Buster. I went through menopause 2 years ago. I've had zero libido since then. I go through KY like it's fashion. The only reason I'm still in this business is because I have no other choice. Grinning, I pulled some papers out of my coat pocket. Go through them and let me know what you think. This isn't a free ride, Caitlin. It will mean hard work and long hours. For one thing, I doubt you'll be able to hire a permanent staff. The best you'll be able to do is bring in helpers during busy periods, but other than that, you'll be the head cook and bottle washer, and it'll all be your blood, sweat, and tears. As for me, I'll take 25% of the after-tax profits as an investment for my capital. If you want to own the business outright in the end, I'll take another 25 as repayment of the loan until it's paid off. If trading goes badly, I'll let you defer repaying the loan until business picks up again, and you can support yourself. Katie read the document with tears in her eyes. She kept blotting them, trying to make sense of what she was reading. Finally, she put the contract on the table, her hands trembling. I don't know what to say. Thank you seems so inadequate. I'll bear your children is unnecessary. I've already been there, done that. So I'll just have to promise to never make you regret this most kind gesture. But my promise has a price. I can live with that offer. What's the price? You have to let me hug you in gratitude whenever I want. Damn woman, you drive a hard bargain. I had a great teacher, she grinned. That night I met Michelle for dinner. Who the hell is Michelle, you ask? Ooh, she's my latest in a very long line of conquests. I've been dating her for 2 months now, and I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but I thought she looked a little different. You look ravishing, my dear. Thank you, kind sir. You don't look too bad yourself. After I went to my house and had one of the wildest nights I'd had in a long time, Michelle asked, Wow, what was that? You were great? I think I can handle it. There's nothing like starting your day with something nice. Especially when the pleasantries are done to you. Michelle wasn't fooled. What's wrong? Let's just say I put the last of my ghosts to rest. We lay staring at the ceiling for quite a while before Michelle spoke again. Does that mean I can stay a little longer than most? I really hope so, yes. I'm not stupid after all, despite the blonde hair. I know your reputation as someone who changes girlfriends monthly. You're a damn good man, Jeffrey Summers, and I was hoping we might have some kind of future together. I'm not a jealous man, and I understand if you just want to play the field. I'm just asking if I could be there at the top of the heap instead of at the bottom. That's when I realized that what I'd done for Kathy was already paying off. You're a good woman yourself, Michelle Daniels. I think I've had enough of my wanderings, and maybe we'll see how far into the future that goes. I think I'll stay home a little longer if that's okay with you. Michelle snuggled into my shoulder. I don't mind it one bit. What's more, I can definitely live with it. I dozed off, contemplating my next challenge. Mother and child recovery surgery. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but after all, nothing was worth its salt. It had to be done subtly. And for me, that was the hardest part. I knew that if I was blunt, the girls would be in trouble. Every time I mentioned their mother, I could see the contempt on their faces, and at first I'd been happy about it, but lately it had become very frustrating. I devised a plan and then left it up to the gods to bless my idea. I had the local newspaper print a full-page article with a picture of Katie looking like a clean-cut businesswoman due to a change in management at a popular coffee shop, and left it on the kitchen bench face up for the girls to visit. Hey, it's subtle to me. There was no mention of me being a co-owner or financier. As expected, Tara, our oldest, saw the article and nudged her sister Beth. Between them, they were talking in low tones so I couldn't hear them. They never mentioned the article, but the call I got from Kathy a week later made me think it worked. Kathy. Good to hear from you. How are you? It's gaining momentum. The new cars we put in were a good idea. I've never been so busy in my whole life. You were right about the long hours and hard work, though. When I get home, all I want to do is collapse in a heap and go to sleep. But all in all, I've never been happier. You'll have to stop by my place for a freebie sometime." Then there was silence, followed by a giggle. God, I never thought I could say that again without being disgusted with myself. "I want to thank you for your help with the girls. They showed up here on Monday. Looks like my plan worked a treat. The balls are in your possession. Don't drop it." I grinned. "I won't, Jeff, I promise. Why don't you come over for coffee so I can tell you all about it?" "If you'd be so kind, Kathy, I'll stop by your place Friday after work." "So what happened with the girls?" "What did you guys talk about?" I asked, sipping my Muguccino. I'm not one for picking on little coffee cups. Kathy was almost ecstatic to see her daughters for the first time in 4 years. I, on the other hand, was, to say the least, a little surprised. "Are you kidding me?" We hadn't spoken to each other, but I hadn't expected that. The fact that they came and acknowledged my presence was more than I could have hoped for. I told Susie not to charge them, but they insisted and even complimented us on our service. These are the first steps toward reconciliation, and I have you to thank for that. She then proceeded to hug me to death. The things a man has to put up with to keep the peace. Well, someone has to do it. Over the next year, Katie rebuilt her relationship with the girls little by little. I have no illusions like Caitlin that they will ever be as close as they once were, but I'm sure there will be a friendship between them, if not mother and daughter, then perhaps a favorite aunt and niece. I'm just glad that after all this time, wounds can heal and fences can be mended, even if they don't look as smooth as they used to. Then, things got a little more complicated, and if it wasn't for my close relationship with Michelle, things might have been even more complicated than they were. One day, Kathy called me and asked if I could stop by to help her with her taxes, and I agreed to pick her up after she closed up store. I was just pulling up to the house when I saw some man take a swing at Kathy and catch her right on the side of the face. I jumped out of the car. She didn't chicken out and certainly didn't back down, scolding him. The volume of their voices carried on the early evening breeze. "You hit me again, and I can guarantee it will be the last time you do that." "I've already told you I'm not in this business anymore." "You stupid whore. Just because you own a shitty little coffee shop now, you think you're a born-again goddamn virgin? Once a cheater, always a cheater in my book. I'll pay double what you want. Hell, I can afford an extra $50 for the whole night." Katie couldn't help but notice me, and something in her eyes told me to back off and stay out of it for now. The fool didn't even realize I was standing right behind him, waiting for him to raise his hand to her again. "You're the idiot, Robert. Just because you're suffering now that you don't have your precious escort business lining your pockets doesn't give you the right to bully me. Just because it was Jeffrey who ruined your honeypot doesn't give you the right to come here and harass me. You knew what hiring married women leads to, and what you think will happen when one of the husbands resents being cuckolded. I have lost far more than you have, so forgive me if I don't sympathize much with your suffering." I could see his rage. His body was literally shaking. "I'm not worried about you or the former bastard. A slut like you will fall again, and when you do, I'll be there for you, making you wish your precious hubby had destroyed you instead of divorcing you." "Well, then I have no reason to worry. I'm already menopausal, and I'm not interested in sex anymore, so the temptation that got me into this to begin with is gone now. You weren't that good even when I wanted you to be, so now I think you're just a pathetic loser who can't accept the fact that you got screwed by a better man." I could see the determination in Kathy's eyes as she continued. "If I am to be reclaimed ever again, only one man has the rights to do so, and I'll tell you right now that I wouldn't expect or need him to ask to use them, just so I can show my appreciation to a wonderful man." Kathy looked right past Robert and into my eyes with a fiery passion like I hadn't seen in years. "Yes, do you think so? Who is the big man then? Who do you think is every woman's wet dream? It can't be your ex." Kathy just stood there giggling. "That's my ex-husband Jeffrey Summers, asshole. He has more sexiness and character in his little toe than your whole body." I have to admit that by this point, I was feeling quite tipsy and grinning evilly. "You think you're safe, don't you? Well, think again, dumbass." With those words, he raised his hand to deliver another backhanded blow to Katie's face. To give Katie credit, she didn't flinch when she answered. "I wouldn't if I were you, but you might not like the consequences." Robert held back his punch for a split second. Very, and who's going to make me? You? Katie only giggled, which infuriated Robert even more. Oh, God, no. But Jeffrey might have something to say about it. He's standing right behind you. Robert turned to meet my fist, backed by all my 200 pounds of solid muscle. That might be an exaggeration, but I worked out at the gym, didn't I? Hell, I had to do it to keep up with Michelle. She was 15 years younger than me, and I needed any advantage I could get. My size 10 to his family jewels ended any impulse Robert had to procreate for the next 6 months. Who is that? What do you even see in that guy? Katie sighed. I really don't know. Katie scrunched up her face. He even hits like a girl. As we sat in Kathy's kitchen going over her tax documents, I asked, So you think I'm the man? Katie only smiled. Don't let it go to your head, but yes, you are the man. You are and always have been my man. I may not have honored the leaving all the others, part of our vows, but I'm determined to achieve until death do us part. Right. I don't care if we divorce or if another woman comes into your life, but from now on, you will always be the only man in mine. We chatted all evening, and when I got up to leave, I asked one last question. If I'm a man, what was that 5-inch pencil shit in your story? A sheepish grin appeared on Katie's face. Oops, sorry. My bad. I underestimated your size a bit. I didn't want the listener to think I was a total slut. So I tried to make them feel sorry for me that I had to deal with small firearms instead of heavy artillery. I didn't mean anything by it, I really didn't. I told Michelle what had happened, and she had no comment on what had happened. She seemed a little distant a few times when I met her for a cup of coffee to discuss management issues with Kathy, and once I had to make a remark. Is something wrong, Mickey? Michelle only smiled and patted me on the side. With you by my side, how can anything be wrong? I really didn't know how to fix the situation, but then I didn't have to. The girls did it for me. Kathy was sweeping up the last remnants of the day's traffic by the back door when I showed up. Almost done for the day? I inquired. Kathy looked tired, but her face lit up at the sight of me. If things keep going the way they are, I can hire someone else to do the dirty work from now on. After we finished with the bills, I paused, and Kathy remarked, I can see you have something else on your mind. Is there anything I can do to help? I sighed. This was going to be harder than I thought. I have something to say, and I don't know how to do it. I think I know what you're going to say, but I suggest you speak up. You've always been an honest shot, Jeffrey. That's what I've always appreciated about you. I think now that the business is set up, I'm going to back off and let you take full control. I think Michelle is getting a little worried about how much time I'm spending here, and the last thing I want is for her to get the impression that there's something going on between us. She's a good woman, Katie. I know you won't like this, but she deserves all of my attention. Katie's eyes clouded over, but she made a brave face. I know I'll never have anything intimate with you from now on, but I was hoping we could still remain friends. I was hoping that at the very least we'd become business partners. I shook my head. I don't know, Katie, I'm not sure that's going to work. Michelle means a lot to me right now, and I don't want her to feel like she's competing with you for my affection. I knew you'd think that, Jeff. Michelle and I had a chat, and she thinks it's good that I'm here so you can have a sympathetic ear to scold. Old saying, the devil, you know. She thinks she would have lost her way long ago without me, and she came to thank me for not trying to steal you away from her. She told me that you mentioned our little meeting with Robert and the conversation that followed, and she thinks it might work. I told her that you're too honest to go behind her back, and she agrees with me. That's what makes you the man we both love. Katie noticed the look I threw at her. Don't be so shocked. You know perfectly well that we both think the best of you. Michelle knows that I love you, and she also knows that I wouldn't do anything to take you away from her. I had my chance, Jeff, and I blew it right out the door. We both love you, and neither of us has any interest in preventing the other from enjoying your company. At the same time, we both don't want some other gold digger trying to get her dirty fingers in your pants. So we made a deal. Michelle will be your wife. I know you love her and she loves you as much as I do. If you decide that's the path you want to take, you have my best wishes. And at the same time, I get the opportunity to be your best friend and business partner. That is, if you accept me? Kathy leaned back in her chair and smiled. How do you like Jeffrey Summers' dem apples? What could I say except, "Put it here, partner." Holding out her hand to me, Kathy took it and laughed. In the inimitable expression of one author, life goes on. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.